Talk about a guy who's firmly in that wide receiver 2 range. Right now is going as the wide receiver 19, so that's the late 4th, early 5th round. And it's Courtland Sutton. I've been a big Courtland Sutton truther. I love his ADP. Very happy with him as my wide receiver 2 or even a flex. And in 2019, he had a very similar stat line to DJ Moore, who everybody loves and is sitting at the wide receiver 12 right now in ADP. So DJ Moore had 87 receptions, 1,175 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Courtland Sutton had 72 receptions, so a drop-off in receptions, but he had almost the same amount of yards, 1,112, and he had 2 more touchdowns and more with 6. And Sutton is the only proven option in Denver with the rookies Judy and Hamler coming in. Both options combined with Fant don't scare me for Sutton, who produced with Joe Flacco and Brandon Allen at quarterback last year. I did a film breakdown on Sutton around mid-season, and my main takeaway from the whole video, the whole film analysis of his 2019 plays was that he's proven to be quarterback proof, and he only continued to prove that as the season went on and when Drew Lock took over. He was top 20 in damn near every stat category in just his second year in the NFL. 15th in targets, 11th in deep targets, 17th in yards, 17th in yards after the catch, 10th in air yards, 9th in red zone receptions. There's not a stat category that's disappointing for Courtland Sutton. He should be a prime third-year breakout candidate who is currently getting drafted at his floor at age 24. I jumped on the hype train early in the offseason. I kind of saw this coming, and then I looked around and I realized I'm the only one on this Courtland Sutton hype train. Blake Hampton from the FTN Network, he does a lot of predictive modeling and analytics in fantasy, and he loves Sutton. And one of the biggest metrics he pointed out is yards per team offensive attempt. So that's the total amount of yards from a team in each one of their plays. So we're factoring in pace of play. We're factoring in the yardage of the team. And Sutton was 9th in the NFL in yards per team offensive attempt. That was more than Julio, more than Kenny Golladay, more than Tyreek Hill. That fits right in with him being 8th in the NFL in target share last year. So as it stands, Sutton is the best receiver and most heavily relied upon option in Denver's passing game. And if Pat Shurmur can get him in these one-on-one matchups, and then you add in all the other weapons, Melvin Gordon pulling defenders, and I think Sutton will eat. He's a fringe wide receiver 1 if Drew Lock ends up breaking out, but he should be okay if the wheels fell off because the wheels had already fallen off last season. He's the wide receiver 18 in my rankings, so right there at his ADP. Alex, do you agree with me? Are you high on Sutton?
No.
I feel like he's primed for a breakout. You're not?
No,
What?
I don't. It's funny that you're saying he's being drafted as his floor because I think he's being drafted closer to his ceiling. And
Really?
I'm cold on Sutton this year, and it has nothing to do with Sutton as a player. I think he's awesome. Sutton's a
He's
beast
so
athlete.
good.
If you watch the games last season with the quarterback issues, Sutton was putting up points
He's so
in
good.
fantasy and in the real NFL because he was just making remarkable plays. But for me, he finished as the wide receiver 19 last year when he had a remarkable season, was incredibly productive, incredibly efficient, making highlight reel plays. And this year he's being drafted as the wide receiver 18. So to me, it's more about Drew Lock. And how many times do we really expect Drew Lock to pass the ball this season? And how good do we expect Drew Lock to be? I know there's been a lot of buzz around Drew Lock and the mini breakout he had to end last season, but I don't really know what mini breakout people were talking about. He had one good game against Houston where he had 300 yards and 3 touchdowns and an interception, but that's when Houston's defense was in shambles. Outside of that, against Kansas City, he had 200 yards on less than 50% completion percentage, 0 touchdowns and a pick.
That was the snow game.
Detroit. Okay, the next week against Detroit was 192 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions. But 192 yards and a touchdown's not getting it done. The next week against the Raiders, 177 yards and a touchdown. That's in the first game he played against the Chargers, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. So it's he had one decent game, and everyone's freaking out. And I think Drew Lock, I hope he's good. For this Broncos offense and the weapons they have, I hope he's good. But why do we think Drew Lock's going to be able to come in and support all these weapons? I get it. Last year they had bad quarterback play, but Sutton was all they had. Noah Fant was second on the team in targets with 66.
Ugh.
So this year, Noah Fant's going to take a step forward because he's not a rookie tight end anymore, and we know what happens with rookie tight ends. They're just not involved.
Sure.
They bring in Jerry Jeudy in the first round, and they bring in KJ Hamler in the second round, and they bring in Melvin Gordon, who not only is going to get work on the goal line, but he's a pass-catching running back. There's not going to be as many targets for Courtland Sutton this year unless Drew Lock throws the ball way more than I think he's going to. So for me, this is not.
Where do you have Drew Lock projected in terms of pass attempts?
I'll check that out for you. I have Drew Lock projected for 540 pass attempts, which feels like a lot.
Wow, because I have him at 5'10", and I'm still very high on Sutton. That's crazy.
I have Sutton at 121 targets. I mean, I have Sutton ranked as my wide receiver 25, so I'm not totally out on him, but there's just so many players in that range with better offenses that feel safer to me. There's way more players in Denver, way more options to get the ball to, and Drew Lock is going to have to really break out to be able to support Sutton this season. To me, it just comes down to, like, last year, I get his quarterback play was bad, but he was all they had. And this season, you're bringing in these weapons. They're going to spread the ball out a little bit more. Unless the efficiency is, like, next level and there's suddenly a top half offense, which I don't think either of us are expecting the Broncos to be a top half offense. I just don't know why or how we can project Sutton to be a top 20 wide receiver. The efficiency might be there, but the volume's not going to be there.
I mean, he finishes a wide receiver 2 or better in 45% of his games last season, averaged 14 PPR points a game with all those different QBs. I feel like he's a lock for, no pun intended, he's a lock for 100 targets, and that's low. And that's low. That's where you're getting.
That's so low. Yeah, 100. He'll get 120 targets.
See, and if he does, I mean, that's what he had last season.
Right, when he was wide receiver 19 and he's being drafted as wide receiver 18.
I feel like it's only going to go up. Yes, the wheels could fall off. That's something that we kind of know about all the Denver options. We've talked about that with Melvin Gordon, who I do feel like is the one actually safe option in this offense. We can talk about Gordon more, but I'm high on Sutton, and like I feel like it can't get worse than it was last season.
I'm not like totally fading Sutton to oblivion. If he falls a little bit down draft boards, if he's around later than he's going right now, I have no problem drafting him there as a wide receiver 2. If I stacked up on running backs, like I'm totally fine with that. But for me, I just don't see the upside there in this offense unless Drew Lock is a lot better than I think he is.
Well, that's where the upside comes in, because what if Drew Lock comes in and he's great?
Exactly. Yeah, so, I'm just not counting on that. Like I think
that's fair.
It's all about probability, right? Like, of course, there's always, a world where something happens, but I'm giving the world where Drew Lock comes in and throws it 600 times and throws, Patrick Mahomes level breakout. It doesn't even have to be there. So I'm not saying that, but I'm just giving that such a small percentage chance. I think Drew Lock's going to come in and be better than what they had last season, but to say it's going to be enough to really be that good, I'm just not quite there yet. And I don't want to draft a receiver as my wide receiver 2, as a top 20 receiver, when it's not even about him. It's all about the quarterback playing the offense. I don't want to worry about that when I could go get DJ Chark, Tyler Lockett, even T.Y. Hilton, some of these other guys that are safer.
I like the Chark option over him. I don't know about Hilton. I feel like he's safer than Hilton, but it's so annoying as fantasy analysts that Drew Lock only had 5 games, such a limited sample size. It's really, I don't feel like we know if he's good or not.